Hi, Misha here, and continuing to look at the various Starfleet ships based on era and design lineage from more of a beta canon, head canon, and maybe video game application. First started off looking at the ones derived from the Galaxy class, then looked at the ones from the Constitution refit, then the Excelsior, then went back in time even further to the NX era, and now we'll look at the 23rd century, the TOS era, as best we can. Unfortunately, there's just not a lot of ships in the Eagle Moss collection, or even in general from this era. As much as I said I was happy they made a lot from the NX era, I kind of wish they had made more from the Constitution original TOS era, like the Ophasa ships, or if nothing else, like some of the ones seen on screen, like the Ptolemy and the Saladin class, just to flesh it out a bit more. But I get it; they're pretty much kit bashes from the old tech manuals, and not strictly speaking canon. But with that, we'll do the best we can, because we can't ignore the era of young, thin Kirk, right? And yes, that's hobo meowing, because of course it is. Very briefly, we're going to visit the Bonaventure class again. I did feature this at the end of my NX era, but in case you didn't watch that video, yeah, this is a concept ship first seen in 2006, and the ships of the line calendars, and kind of has been different things over time. So there was a different Bonaventure shown in the animated series, and it was supposed to be an older era of ship. Some even said it was Zephyr Cochrane's ship, but of course, things have changed. But you can see here how it definitely resembles the Constitution era, including the nacelles, including this kind of cool little deflector on the front. But its star drive is integrated with the hull and leads back here to the shuttle bay. This would have been the heavy cruiser in use during the late 22nd and early 23rd century. And yes, still hobo. Next up, we have another refugee from the 22nd century that was still operating into the 23rd. The Daedalus class, and a unique class at that. And when I was getting into the Eagle Moss collection, this was a hard one to get for a while. This was issue 100, and is often sold out because this is kind of a fan favorite. For one thing, they did a very good job with the model. It's a very good size. It's one of the biggest. And while it has a good bit of plastic, like the bottom part of the star drive, and of course the nacelles, the saucer, ball is metal, and the top part of the star drive is metal, and this stem here, the neck is metal. So yeah, it's a good size. I would have been a little happier if it would have been more metal, but take what you can get for what these are. If the Bonaventure type was the heavy cruiser, this was more of the deep space exploration craft, the science ship, the survey craft, more in that vein, kind of what would eventually lead to the Oberth. This was about 140 meters long, but because of the very thick star drive and the ball section, it had a crew of over 200, about 220 to 230. It was capable of warp 7, had phasers and photonic, maybe later photon torpedoes, and again was set up for scientific surveys and exploration. It was also charged with a lot of the early first contact missions, as we know, because of the USS Horizon. This would have been one of the first Federation ships, and kind of explains the less than normal appearance. This is still when they were figuring out their designs. And in my headcanon, as I've said in other videos, I actually did kind of a joke writing series back, I guess we were in 7th grade, where we did, I did a kind of a series written about this ship called the SS Deadfly, and it was just a spoof done back, early 90s, I guess. Yeah. Because this ship has been kind of in canon in certain aspects for a while. It's appeared on displays, and there's been a couple of models shown in the background saying DS9, but the ship was referenced going all the way back to TOS, so it's been around for a long time, and this design shape has been kind of hit upon for a very long time, so it's not something relatively new. And it's meant to look clunky and old, but I think a lot of us have just kind of come to identify it as a neat design. But it certainly wasn't a warship, and it certainly wasn't considered, I don't know. It's a deep space explorer, maybe a medium cruiser. At 140 meters, it was a lot shorter, although it has a lot of internal volume. And this was the mainstay for a long time. They produced a lot of these, and quite a few Daedalus class ships have been referred to on screen. Yes, Hobo is quite relentless, I know. But they did a very good job with this model, giving it extra details to the hull and stuff that originally it probably didn't have. And it would have been neat to maybe see some of these in the TOS Remastered series, but even though it is 22nd century more than 23rd, it seemed to be included because it does kind of add to the Constitution era. And I think it's just one of those ships I think we all really like. And it's one of those first kind of attitudes of peace that you see for the Federation. And here we have kind of the 23rd century replacement or continuation of the Daedalus design. We don't have a class name for this. It's referred to as Medusan Transport or Starship or Diplomatic Transport. This was not seen in the original TOS, but it was created for TOS Remastered, and fits in, I think, quite well. It said that this was a Federation ship based on Starfleet technology. At least in that episode, it was used by the Medusans, but it would seem to fit in quite well with the Starfleet design lineage. So we're going to include it here just because we have so few ships, and it does fit well. It's smaller than the Daedalus at about 90 meters. It only has a crew of 30, but it has plenty of room for transport. It's said that humans are mostly housed in the ball, with accommodations for special alien life, kind of specialized living quarters, and more of the, maybe call it Star Drive section. Has some unique features too that kind of aid in its diplomatic function. It has these warp nacelles that are tucked in to provide a slim, compact, stable warp field, maximum speed of warp 6, cruise of warp 5, so quite quick for its stand time. Of course, we have a deflector dish that's integrated into the primary hull. We have a bridge in the regular position, and we have this kind of neat communications array, long-range, high-powered comms array right behind the bridge, which would make sense for a diplomatic ship. We also know it has phasers. Not sure about photon torpedoes, but phasers and shields. And it was also combat capable. This was certainly in service in the 2260s and was still in service in the 2270s. Again, we really don't know a whole lot about it. It does have a shuttle bay back here, and it has these interesting connective pylons that run through the ship. And if you look at the bottom of the secondary hull, it does resemble that later found on the Constitution class. So yeah, since we really need more Federation ships for this period, Starfleet ships, I'm going to chunk it in because it does fit right in well with the Daedalus. So this could have been, in addition to diplomatic transport, a science ship and whatnot. And in a game setting, I think its role would be quite obvious. A neat little, compact, modernized Daedalus. And Eagle Moss did a good job with this. Again, this was made for TOS Remastered, and because of the nature of the models for that, all of those kind of seem a little small and low detail, but that was done on purpose to mesh well with the 1960s style. It would not have done to have super high-res, high-detailed ships in the 1960s, and it just wouldn't have fit. So because of the relative low detail, when they made these into miniatures for Eagle Moss, they ended up being a little small, but it's not teeny tiny. It's got a decent amount of weight to it. The ball is metal. Part of the star drive is metal. This is plastic. But I think it fits in well when you consider the Daedalus, and it shows kind of an alternative to the standard design. Starfleet kind of finding its way. Moving right along, we have one of the many Antares or Antares class ships seen in Star Trek. This is the one seen in Charlie X, the SS Antares. And this is another one created for TOS Remastered, although it's based on a design first seen as a robot ship or automated grain ship in the animated series. So it has some credence. And it fits in okay. It's definitely a weird little blocky design that, yeah, would fit in well enough with the 1960s aesthetic. And it was nice to have an actual model because we saw the crew and everything of the ship in the episode, but of course in the original series we never saw it. So what do we know about it? Well, she's not huge, about 145 meters, crew of 20. So most of the space was taken up by cargo. We have kind of a deflector down here, along with the truncated hull, and some storage here. And then we have the front pod here with more storage. Even though it's a smaller ship than the Constitution, it actually has greater cargo capacity, greater cargo bays. But it's much slower. About a Warp-5 ship at maximum. And just basic weapons, phasers. In addition to being used as a freighter or transport, these were also used as planetary survey craft. So they had some scientific capability. It was just kind of an older workhorse ship. And we know of several. There was the USS Woden, the USS Yorkshire. And it's just, yeah, it's one of those workaday ships in a row that the Miranda would later take on with the freighters and transports and what have you. It's not exactly elegant or pretty, and I think they conveyed that very well with this little model. Again, size-wise, it's a little small, but one nice thing, it's very, very chunky. It's pretty much all metal. Even this back part's metal. The saucer, if you want to call it that, is metal. And again, there's a version that doesn't have this front section we saw in the animated series, so it's just this back part. It's about 100 meters, and it was just meant to be an automated transport robot ship. And it fits in with the TOS aesthetic. We have little spikes on the nacelles and the little fins. I'm certainly glad they made it for the show, and it's just one more ship, but certainly not a glorious starship. This would be a freighter, a transport, a mining ship, maybe, in any video game type setting. And yeah, get another Antares class. And now we come to the Constitution, the Connie, at least the first edition. This is a bonus from Eagle Moss, and this is the cage version. The biggest difference is we have a much larger deflector dish. We have spikes on the Bassard collectors, and we have kind of a difference a little bit in the shuttle bay and also at the back of the nacelles here. We also should have a larger bridge, which they really didn't do. I think they might have made it a little bit bigger, but it still seems too small. But, you know, this was a bonus edition, so take what you can get. The main thing is having the large deflector here. And in the real world, the reason was the Enterprise was actually a smaller ship during the cage. It had a crew of just over 200. And just looking at the bridge and stuff, I think it was just meant to be a smaller vessel. In the normal timeline, this was about 289 meters long. Probably in that version, it would have been closer to 200 meters, or 230 maybe. We really don't know because it was just the cage. And again, it's just different the way the engines are done here on the underside. It's kind of the early styling and what have yous. Also, the lighting was a little bit different. But the Constitution class, well, the Enterprise was launched in 2245 and wasn't the first the Constitution would be. So they did it back to 2240, give or take. And this was the first starship. It had brand new technology, brand new computer systems, had a maximum warp of 8, a cruise of 6, and was just meant to be the cat's pajamas. And I thought it was neat to have the cage version with the big old deflector. Next up, we have kind of an in-between. Now this is the Mirror Enterprise. We have the same type of nacelles with the spikes and no caps on the back. But since this is supposed to be the regular 289 meter with a crew of over 400, it has the smaller deflector, and it would correctly have the smaller bridge to give the overall larger appearance. Again, this is from the Mirror universe. You could also call this the cage version from the second pilot, showing the evolution of the Constitution design. So this would have been, well, the cage version would have been how it appeared in the 2250s. This would have been early 2260s configuration. Yeah, so after a little bit of a refit, let's say. This would have had 21 decks, and again would have been the pride of the fleet. Originally they would make 12 of these because they were such new tech. They were pretty expensive to make. So they would start off slow with 12. But they wouldn't end there. Now we come to the classic Connie, and this was issue 50 in the collection. Note the end caps on the nacelles. Also, a little bit different patterning there. And we have the more traditional balls for the Bassard collectors. And the lights on the edge of the saucer are a little smaller, which again kind of credits to the bigger size of the original versus what this is supposed to be. Here, I'm going to have the smaller bridge. But this is your classic mid-2260s and late 2260s Connie. Enterprise was one of many at the time, and was considered a heavy cruiser, deep space explorer. And of course, in the original series, this is the only Federation Starfleet ship we really see because, well, budget. And we see other ships with other names, but they're all Connies. Luckily, it was a very attractive design and still holds up to this day. Very sleek and calm, not too busy, and a very radical spaceship look for the 1960s. If you think about it, I mean, it's iconic today, so we probably don't, but if you really think about how spaceships were portrayed before this, they were basically rocket ships. This was the first one to go in a whole different direction. Although, to be fair, it does have the classic flying saucer and a little bit of the classic rocket ship in the nacelles. And of course, what we know as the deflector dish today, frankly, started off as a communications dish, a satellite dish, because in the 1960s, that was very modern technology. But yeah, for a long time, this was the Federation ship. And as I'm sure a lot of you know, the original name for the ship was going to be the Yorktown. And here is a convention bonus edition that Eagle Moss did a while back, marked USS Yorktown with its own registry. I think it's 1717, but I could be wrong. Now, when I bought this, I was hoping it would have the early features like the spiked Bussard collectors and a large dish, but of course it doesn't. It's just the regular mold, the regular tooling for the Enterprise, but a remarked Yorktown. Luckily, I bought it discounted, so this is $15 for that. It's fine. It's kind of neat. It came with a special stand too. It has its own placard with a different color and stuff. It just goes to show you there were plenty of ships named in the Constitution class named in the original series. We had the Defiant, quite famous, especially because of the Enterprise episodes. And we had the Essex. One I like was the USS Congo, and it's named with a K, so it's after the Japanese battleship, the Lexington, and of course the Yorktown and many others. And even though they only planned to make 12, the design was such a success that they ended up making quite more than that. So in a video game setting, these would all pretty much be the same: heavy cruiser, deep space exploration. If you really wanted to, you could make the Cage type a slightly smaller, cheaper version, and you could kind of show the upgrade with the newer warp engines, giving it a little bit faster speed or faster acceleration with the less spiky version. But it's up to you. Pretty much all would be the same, armed with phasers and photon torpedoes, and again with a crew of around 400 to 430. This would be a match for battleships of the era like the Klingon D7 and what have you, and it would again be on the 5-year missions. They would send out the original dozen of these on 5-year missions, and the Enterprise herself would go on several, again beginning in 2245 and running through 2270, or maybe 2269 if you want to get technical. And wrapping back around for our final ship, we come to the Phase 2 Enterprise, and I've featured this in the TMP video, but I figured bring it back here because it is, again, that transition towards the end of her last 5-year mission, or at least the last one under the old style. The Enterprise was severely damaged in a battle, losing a warp nacelle. And originally she was going to be refit for the second series. And of course, we'd end up going for the full TMP look for the movie. But we can say, in headcanon and whatnot, that some of the other ships, because many of the other constitutions were damaged and retrofit later, and many others were made after the fact. So this could have been the in-between version that was launched in the late 2260s or early 2270s before the full refit. And the main thing is we have the swept-back pylons, a more TMP-looking nacelle. We also have a more TMP-looking bridge with two turbo lift shafts here, a little bit bigger. But we have a more classic Connie deflector, more of a classic hull in the back, and a saucer in between, really, both styles. Interestingly, this does have the photon torpedo launchers over the deflector on the gooseneck. I just really like it. It's a very sleek and in-between look, and it would have been kind of neat to see it on screen. And we did, in a way. We saw this version in diagrams on computer displays, and I think we might have even seen a study model kind of in the backdrop of Starbase at one point, if memory serves. So it's kind of soft canon. We know that the TMP Enterprise had warp 9 as its top speed versus the TOS, so we could say this had warp 9 or maybe warp 8.5, and just kind of had features in between. It's also worth pointing out, because of the new engines, it was closer to 300 meters long, so a little bit longer because of the swept-back engines. And yeah, just a little more capable. So this could have been the version fielded right before the Enterprise refit. And kind of shows you the continuing evolution of the Constitution class, which, 2245 running up through, say, 2275, that doesn't make it very old at all. Earth battleships lasted much longer than that, with routine, regular refits and updates. So just for comparison, I thought I'd show it. And there, once again, we have another one of these episodes. I'm mostly just doing it for fun, yeah, with the new camera, but just sharing some of my headcanon and little tidbits I've kind of picked up over the years. I enjoy laying things out in fleets like this. Just fun for me. Hope it's fun for you too. I did my best to flesh out the TOS era. Thankfully, because of the remastered series, we do have a couple of new ships. Otherwise, it would pretty much be the Daedalus and a bunch of Connies. But that's alright. It would be neat to see a TOS Miranda take, because we know that the Reliant was around. So I kind of wish Eaglemoss would do TOS concept ships, like, again, the Saladin, the Ptolemy. Maybe, like I said, the Miranda and the old guys. And maybe even the Federation class, the Dreadnought, the 3 nacelle version. That'd be kind of neat. Just the various ships from the old tech manuals and what have you. But for now, this is what we have, and I had to show them and give them their just desserts, even if I did repeat a couple here. So now, yeah, we've kind of gone from the 24th century back to the 22nd or 23rd, then the 22nd, back to the 23rd, and next I think we'll head back to the 24th and look at some other fleets in the more modern era. So let me know what you think and how you're enjoying these. Again, I just really felt like doing some Star Trek stuff because I haven't done it in a while, so yeah. Hope the new camera's still working out okay, and hope you get something on screen. Appreciate you tuning in. This is Misha, and I'll catch you very soon. Next time.